Hello, and welcome to Worst Representation Possible. Thank you for joining us again this week. Last week, our panelists looked at the way in which feminine representation and heteronormative labeling flood our popular culture that make it, as Judith Butler put it, walking out of one closet and into another. On a similar note this week, I am joined by Cornell West, Bell Hooks, and Trisha Rose. We will be looking at a range of different popular culture pieces to determine the worst representation possible.
As a consumer, you want to have options and comparison. You want things to be easy. I want to be able to walk into a store and see myself represented.
Over the past few years, mainstream beauty companies have been making an effort to be more inclusive. But why is it taking them so long to get it right?
When it comes to beauty, they're usually based on very narrow ideas of what constitutes beautiful. And even if there are a wider range of women who are demanding products, a wider range of consumers who want to see themselves reflected and are willing to pay money to get these products, many brands are unwilling to cater to them in fears that it will damage their brand, in fears that it will make their brand less glamorous, less beautiful if it's attached to Black women, if it's attached to darker skinned women.
Well, I could see how most people would look at this problem and engage with walking nihilism. They wouldn't care. They'd be indifferent because it wouldn't directly threaten them or their assumed place in society. This walking nihilism is part of the illusion that living in an assumed postmodern society requires, and that the majority of people subscribe to. Those that indulge themselves in walking nihilism tend to be persons who already are strongly represented in society, who can live without questions of their identity. On the other hand, to be Black and to live in Black culture is to know a reality that others cannot imagine.
Yeah, great point. Even something as trivial as makeup can be a tool for perpetuating white supremacy and in turn embedding those ideals into beauty standards and representation. Even with blacker shades of makeup, there are only a couple of options. It's diminishing and marginalizing the vast array of life experiences Black people can have. By elaborating on these experiences through representation, you are giving the opportunity for young Black individuals to form their own notions and creations of identity and asserting their own agency, no matter how diverse or multidimensional.
I do see evidence of reluctance of companies in regard to including diversity in skin tone by a fear of damage to their brand. These brands are trying to accomplish beautiful, glamorous ideas of what women are, with endless shades of beige and very limited dark shades. This is showing women that only those couple shades of dark are okay and accepted. It is a way to repress representation of Black women to keep the perception of the planet and society white. In our society, women of color are represented as objects of fear, whereas white men are choosing what is good and acceptable. This may not be the same as the hyperbolizing violence of Black culture and denying cultural expressions such as music, but you are denying creative expression of young women.
Yes, white men choosing what is good for women of color is exactly the problem here. This is why it's important to be postmodern, not essentialist. Even though you have these colors representing skin in bottles, you have the opportunity to show different representations of women of color, of different shades and different backgrounds, having 100 different shades of color, not 50 shades of beige and 5 of Black.
I agree. Let's move on to the next clip.
Besides, I'm having dinner with Amy.
Oh, okay. I'll just go home and be alone, which is cool. I eat alone, I sleep alone, I cry alone, so cool.
Darn. If you weren't busy, I'd ask you to join us.
Really? I can come? Thanks.
Sheldon, are you sure you want to be bringing Raj on your date night with Amy?
Oh, absolutely. I have a contractual obligation to provide Amy with conversation and casual physical contact, but nowhere is it specified that I can't outsource that to an Indian.
I've said before, postmodernism is not a homogenous phenomenon. In regards to race, we can see in this clip that an Indian man experiences the same types of discrimination of that of a black man.
Yeah, it is very apparent that although this man is meant to be a main character on the show, there's still a level of exclusion. When I was at an event years ago, I would find that although my white friends incorporated me into the event, there was still a level of seclusion that I experienced based on the color of my skin.
I have experienced the same level of racism. It is not just an issue for other African American. It is an issue for all of non-white American. However, by labeling him consciously as an Indian opposed to an American, the character Raj does not fit the mold that American institutions are looking to dismantle. He, on the other hand, is safe in his otherness.
Well, as well, the character Raj is given a voice in the show, and by giving him a voice, he has the power to show that he exists. This does not occur with other marginalized groups, black women being among those groups who are unrecognized. It appears to me that radical postmodernist practices are needed in order to incorporate the voices of those who are marginalized. In this clip, as well as with the entirety of the show, Raj tends to be shut down, as well as was not given the opportunity to speak in front of women for a large portion of the show's running. By having him not be able to speak, he is then further marginalized and left just as a spectacle as opposed to a really dynamic character.
Raj clearly is not given much of an outlet in the series to have cultural expression. This is problematic as it further others him. He is unable to create cultural meaning on his show, which limits the masses watching to understand the difficulties of being a racial minority.
Yeah, a racial minority in an academic setting at that.
Well, let's just move on to the other clip.
I want to be labeled gay. I want to be labeled a human who loves humans. I'm tired of being labeled. I'm an American. I'm not an African American. I'm an American.
Oh, girl, don't get your Twitter on fire.
I'm sorry.
What?
I'm sorry.
My Lord. What did you just say? Stop the tape right now.
This was last year. I got in a lot of heat off the internet and in the black community. I'm not going to say African American community. I'm going to say black community because they thought that I said I wasn't black and that I didn't want to be labeled in general. And you know what, Miley? I agree. We should not be labeled because one, that creates tension between people. You feel like you can look down like, okay, that's this type of person. This is how I should feel about you. Again, I am a black American.
Is it generational though? Do you think that you got a hard time from older people, or do you think younger people are more upset?
No, everybody was mad that I didn't call myself African. I know where my roots come from. She knows where her roots come from. She knows who she lays in the bed with. I don't have to wear it on my sleeve with all the stigma that's been put on us for the last millions of years. Like, let's just be human.
Let me start off by saying that this young lady is certainly a nationalist. She seems to think that African Americans should assimilate into American society. By saying she's American, she's conforming the African American subculture to that of the majority of the United States.
Well, it's without doubt that there is an increase in class division and differentiation between the blacks. This woman is black, middle class, in a sense that she is willing to be co-opted into the powers that be.
Yeah, she should be more of an essentialist. Holding importance on one's history and heritage is a vital part of individual identity.
Well, I believe I know why she did what she did. She was under so much pressure that she decided to be ignorant of her African identity and just use the other half of her identity that has more power, which is being American.
Let's move on. This walking nihilism is absurd.
Every video game allows you to live vicariously through a fictional character, but some games do a particularly good job of making you feel like an unstoppable ass kicker. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 video game badasses. Number 10, Captain Price. Anyone who almost single-handedly ends World War III deserves a spot in the annals of video game badass history. Number 9, B.J. Blazkowicz. One of the earliest unstoppable video game badasses, B.J. Blazkowicz made a name for himself in the original Wolfenstein game, who heroically mows down legions of Nazis, putting an end to their twisted experiments. Number 8, Rex Power Colt.
Work your black magic, Lieutenant.
Hey, don't be hating a brother for his skills now.
Rex Power Colt is your prototypical one-line spitting, butt-kicking cyborg badass killing machine. Number 7, Sam Fisher. Sam Fisher is James Bond on steroids. Number 6, Max Payne. Never afraid to get his hands dirty, Max is fueled by one thing and one thing alone: revenge. Number 5, Solid Snake. Genetically created to be the perfect soldier, Snake combines masteries of infiltration, close and long-range combat. Number 4, Master Chief. He is given the unenviable task of protecting the universe from not one but 2 destructive alien species. Number 3, Samus Aran. The ending of Metroid was downright shocking. At the time, female gaming protagonists were pretty much unheard of. Samus is still a total badass. Number 2, Duke Nukem. Duke Nukem puts all of the famous 90s action stars to shame with his macho, one-liner dropping, heavy machine gun wielding badassery. Number 1, Kratos. If you can single-handedly square off against the entire pantheon of Greek gods and titans and rip them all apart like they're a basket of hot wings, it automatically qualifies you to be the biggest badass in the history of everything.
I look at this and I see the direct hand of publishers in shaping what type of characters players are meant to play. The reason we see almost exclusively white males here is simply because this is who they think their players are. The game makers have to meet a target number of units sold, and every decision on how to make the game is considering that final goal. And as for Watch Mojo list itself, they chose their ranking was likely based on this as well. Not only is there a lack of black gaming badasses, reserving that privilege primarily for white characters, but the channel wants to cater to the same target audience that plays these games. That means choosing white characters for the list.
It's not just publishers at fault either. Players are complicit in this sense. How can they not be? If black men and women want to play video games, then they have to accept this unfair balance. Boycotting an entire industry just won't work here. Single individuals choosing not to play games won't change minds, so the only option for black players becomes to accept it and to try to move on.
It is interesting to note here the response to violence as well. In white men, it is desired trait. They are seen as righteous in their struggle and moreover lauded for their strength and power, whereas black men are characterized as criminal for the same actions. Depiction of black violence are negative, but white violence is badass or heroic.
And let's not forget that the times games do have black characters, they are often roped into sidekick roles, meant to prop up their white comrades, which in turn relieves white players of the guilt they might feel and legitimizes the status quo.
Well, in the end, the industry as a business makes its decisions based on what it thinks will sell, so it markets to white males. But in doing so, it creates a feedback loop, as excluding representations of other races and genders will only continue to push away new audiences.
Let's take a look at the last clip.
You got your toothbrush?
Check.
Do you have your deodorant?
Check.
Do you have your cozy clothes?
Got that.
What?
Do they know I'm black?
Should they?
You might wanna,
Mom and Dad, my black boyfriend will be coming up this weekend. I just don't want you to be shocked that he's a black man.
I ain't never seen you like this before, bruh. Meeting families, taking road trips. Don't come back all bougie, man. Come back, get your damn pants up to your damn stomach.
So you guys coming up from the city?
Yeah, we're just heading up for the weekend.
Can I see your license, please?
He wasn't driving.
I didn't ask who was driving. I asked to see his ID.
Call me Dean and you're hungry, my man.
So how long has this been going on, this thing? We hired Georgina and Walter to help care for my parents. When they died, I couldn't bear to let them go.
Do you smoke in front of my daughter?
I'm gonna quit.
She'd take care of that for you.
How?
Hypnosis.
I'm good, actually.
You ready for this?
How bad can it be?
So look, I go do my research. Apparently, a whole bunch of brothers been missing in this suburb.
But it's cool.
Bro, how you not scared of this, man?
Good to see another brother around here. Chris was just telling me how he felt much more comfortable with my being here. Get out.
Sorry, man.
Get out! Yo!
Rose, we gotta go.
Is everything okay?
Rose, the keys. Just get the keys.
I don't know where they are.
Rose?
Sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
Mine is a terrible thing to waste. Terrible thing to waste.
If there's too many white people, I get nervous.
No.
Mine is a terrible thing to waste.
It is interesting that the victim of the story was underclass black people. And for once, the black community is portrayed as innocent. However, we can still see that the movie portrayed black community as poor and undereducated. I believe slowly we are in touch with reality.
Yeah, to show the otherness of black community, almost in a good way, is a positive step forward. Because in many other movies, the story refuses to admit that white people are racist towards black community, and they always portray black people as the villain. But in this movie, younger members of the black community can understand that even though they might be the victim of racism, they can still be the hero of the story. It's almost like helping younger members to identify themselves in a more positive way.
It's the first time that I see the black figure of a movie is the hero and the victim, not the villain. It's a positive step forward erasing racism. Also, the fear of blackness translated into the fear of white, which is different from what I have seen in Hollywood movies. In most movies, we see violence against white race, but in this movie, the violence is toward black. It gives a sense of reality, since in real life, we see a lot of violence toward black community, even when they are innocent.
Totally.
Thank you to this week's panelists. What an interesting array of perspectives on these cultural artifacts. Next week, we dive into how ideologies are reinforced through representation as per popular cultural visuals. Thank you for joining us and watching Worst Representation Possible. See you next week.